right, as promised, go back to 1967. And you know, I think 1967, I think of just about every one of these on every corner in Western Pennsylvania, Isley's. But you can still relive those memories by stopping in at Coons Market and picking up some of their incredible Isley's barbecue sauce. Speaking of Coons Market, Sunday, Joe and Frank and I, Heinz ketchup recipes, one of my favorite topics, including the ever popular ketchup steak. Don't miss it Sunday at 8 o'clock. Speaking of Coons, it may be after 1 o'clock, but it's 8 o'clock K-Cup coffee. So good. Universal Studios, one of the many places that AAA East Central can take you. You know, my good friend Barry Yeager and his lovely daughter are about ready to hop on board. Boop, boop. Perfect timing. Amtrak. We're going to spend a little time in New York, New York, the Millennial Hotel, bus tour of New York, Bronx, Queens, Manhattan. Ah, yes, there's no place like New York, and if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. So just one of the many ideas as far as getting away and enjoying yourself. And, you know, not to be outdone, we love Universal, but hey, I've been to Disney with my children, absolutely love it, and my good friend Trisha Gray and her fiance, Roddy Schwartzel, happened to be there. If you've seen their wonderful picture on Facebook, you gotta love it, right? You gotta love it. She's a mixologist, Jimmy Klein, and of course, Jimmy Cage. Great place to go to watch the Pirates in action. Speaking of the Pirates, Ted Coppola, who is an incredible individual, Theodore Coppola, as we like to call him affectionately, is a very talented musician. He has late night karaoke, of course, at the Monaca SOI Friday and Saturday and Sunday. Great singers. But he is also an organist at St. Titus. And yes, they're getting ready for their San Rocco this weekend and the procession, right? Well, he brought this to my attention from the Catholic Marketing Network. And for those of us who love baseball and grew up in 1967, you remember, it was long before the Steelers teams of the 70s and those great pit teams and Tony Dorsett in the mid to late 70s. It was all about pirate baseball. And of course, the Penguins were in their infancy as well. And it was Clemente and it was Stargell. And Roberto Clemente was a humanitarian. He lost his life trying to help people in Nicaragua when his plane went down. And we all remember that New Year's morning when we awoke and heard that Roberto Clemente had passed away. Well, this baseball player may be on his way to becoming a saint. The idea may sound like it's out of left field, but the pitch thrown to Pope Francis by filmmaker Richard Rossi turned out to be an unlikely strike. Now, the requirement for a miracle to greenlight the canonization of baseball icon Roberto Clemente, well, folks, it could be met. Now, this story also, according to Sports Illustrated Associated Press, is now officially blessed. Here's the deal. A man actually who was in a wheelchair, was paralyzed, said that Roberto Clemente came to him in a dream and said you would walk at your wedding. True story, folks. True story. Right here. Okay? True story. Well, he did. Now, Pope Francis agrees if this miracle happened, as Rossi predicted, the canonization of Roberto Clemente would go forward. So, sometimes it takes a little time, but if you're good, as Roberto Clemente was to many, always in his native country of Puerto Rico, that's why he is still beloved there today by generations who never saw him play, ever, to this day. So I thought that would be a nice story to begin our look back to 1967. Now, coming up this weekend at the Beaver train station, the Granati Brothers, Back to the 60s, Saturday, August 12th. Just a few tickets remain, so hurry and get them while you can. 250 East End Avenue in Beaver. Celebrate the Heritage Foundation's 50th anniversaries with cars, memorabilia, and music from 1967. All sorts of wonderful things, including Piper's Pit Barbecue, great picnic food, and of course beer. She-Walk Distributing in the neighborhood, right? Aliquippa Beer in the neighborhood, love what they do. And yes, Silverman's Beer Distributor, right smack dab there in Beaver. And it's BYO Wine. Bring your own cups and everything you need will be provided. Openers, fine wine, and good spirits. Love what they do, right? Well, Rick and I are going to talk more about this later tonight. But as I said, sometimes with Mr. Granati, he's a promoter. I've known him since the late 70s, and he's probably the only person on the planet that can out-talk me. So here we go. Cars of the 60s. You think the Mustang, the Corvette, the Mercury Cougar. Some of the songs that were making The Airwaves back then, The Letter, The Bach Tops, Ode to Billy Joe, Bobby Gentry, Windy, The Association, I'm a Believer, The Monkees, Light My Fire, Jim Morrison, The Doors, Something Stupid, Frank and Nancy Sinatra, Happy Together, The Turtles, Groovin', The Young Rascals, and of course Frankie Valli, Can't Take My Eyes Off of You. Beatles, 800 million physical and digital albums worldwide. They stopped touring late in the 60s and kind of were gone before you knew it. But boy, what a legacy. 7 Grammys, 1 Academy Award, 1988 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Of course, the year Sgt. Pepper came out. Great other albums, too, such as Rubber Soul, late in the 60s. Stones, 1962, Mick Jagger, Keith Richards, Charlie Watts, Bill Wyman, Brian Jones, Ian Stewart. Jones left a month before his death, replaced by Mick Taylor, who would eventually be replaced by Ronnie Wood in 1975. Wyman left in 98. Darryl Jones entered. Hey, and then the Tammy Show, in which they followed James Brown and the famous Flames. Mick Jagger to this day says that's where he learned to get the strut. And the Sullivan Show in October of that year as well. 1968 to 72, I'm going to talk to Rick about this because they call this the golden era of the Stones. But the Rolling Stones, I must tell you, some of my earliest memories, because I was such a fan of Motown, when the Miss You album came out and I was just breaking into radio and actually working at a big rock station here in the area, I fell in love with that album. Songs like Miss You and others. It had a disco flair to it, but it had a funk that I don't think the Stones were ever able to duplicate before that, and I think that's the reason why they've continued to be so trendy to this day. You think about the Voodoo Lounge tour in the 90s, grossed $320 million. They're still touring. Recently, a couple of years ago, performing for the first time in Israel. The Rolling Stones have just never stopped, and of course, they'll always be Jumping Jack Flash to me. Now, Tamla Records, 1959 to Motown in 1960. Berry Gordy, his journey into the musical world began. All of the things that this brand did, I believe the most things that it did for America and the world, helped racial integration. I grew up listening to Motown. I've been a fan of Motown and still am today. Temptations, Four Tops, Diana Ross, The Supremes, Stevie Wonder, Michael Jackson, of course, the Jackson 5, Smokey Robinson and the Miracles, Martha Reeves and the Vandellas, Mary Wells, Tammy Terrell, Marvin Gaye. Good stuff, Motown. Now, also 1967, as tonight will be at the Beaver Area Heritage Foundation train station, helping them get ready for their big weekend, as they're going to have music and cars and memorabilia looking back at 1967 to salute the big music weekend. The Granati brothers are there Saturday. Don't miss them. Cost of living. How much things cost in 1967? Yearly inflation in the U.S., 2.78%. Average cost of a new house, a little over $14,000. Average income per year, just a little over $7,000. Average monthly rent, $1.25. Gas per gallon, 33 cents. The average cost of a new car in 1967, a little over $2,500. Movie ticket, $1.25. A Polaroid camera, $50. Parker pen set, $11.95. And the minimum wage, $1.40 an hour. Some of the big stories: 475,000 troops in Vietnam. Muhammad Ali had his title stripped. 7,000 National Guard called in for the Detroit riots. As I mentioned, Sgt. Pepper album. Twiggy was making headlines worldwide. Some of the other groups that were out there making peace with the flower children of the United States at that time: Jefferson Starship, Grateful Dead, and the Byrds. Big movies, Bonnie and Clyde. By the way, Turner Classic Movies going to have a big month looking back at the 50th anniversary of Bonnie and Clyde, plus in select theaters. It will be out there for your enjoyment. Warren Beatty, Faye Dunaway, and also the great movie of that year, one of my all-time favorites, Paul Newman and Cool Hand Luke. 1967, Beaver Area Heritage Foundation train station tonight with Rick Granati, and also this weekend. Please, if you love the Granatis, and who doesn't, get your tickets, because, as they say, it is almost gone, a sellout. Have a great day from your Pratt Pack. See you later tonight. All aboard the Beaver train station.